The world won't understand you. Hey, but it's okay. Said the world won't understand you. Cause I made you in my own way. Said the world won't understand you. Cause I made you different.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 67 of In a Good Way podcast. Today's special guest is Barbara with. I pronounced it correct?
Yes, you did.
Barbara is an author. She's also been doing psychic readings for over 30 years, right? Since 1987,
Yes.
I believe.
Yep.
Wow, that's amazing. And you're joining us from Canada?
Right at this very moment, I am in Madison, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
But I live in Lake Superior. I live on an island in far northern Wisconsin. So it might as well be Canada, but that's where I live. But I'm on this world peace tour, see, and I left in October 15th, and I've been on the road, and I'm leaving today, in fact, after this interview for
Oh, wow. Okay.
more parts. So anyway, that's me, yeah.
Yeah, no, and I guess we could lead up to the peace tour as well. But would you like to tell us a little bit about your story, kind of how it started, right? Were you always, I know I heard an interview where you're talking about your friend's mother that
Yep.
that was kind of one of your mentors at first. So would you like to I guess lead up to that? When you were younger, were you already experiencing things, or what piqued your curiosity? At what point did you say, I want to learn more about this psychic stuff?
Actually, it started with music.
Oh, okay.
I was very young, climbed up onto the piano bench and started teaching myself to sing and play. And then I was writing songs by the time I was 12. And after high school, all I wanted to do was, I had 2 sets of original music, and it was the singer-songwriter era, the early 70s. And I went right out on the road as a musician. And for me, that's what I wanted to do. And that's how channeling sort of snuck up on me, I guess, because it is to write a song. I would say I'd go into the outer space and listen for it, and then I would transcribe it here. And so when my friend Mike in high school said, come see what my mom does, he wouldn't even tell me. I had no idea what he was even talking about. But of course, yeah, I'll go see what Eunice does. And she was this beautiful, just the most gentle soul, and she was mom-like, and she'd always light a candle, and she had a picture of Jesus. And she said she went into outer space and didn't remember what was being said at all. And then when she came back, she didn't recall anything that had happened.
Wow.
And she gave me a reading, and it was like she was looking into my soul. I was coming out of a very disturbed and chaotic household, and she talked this voice that just was like resonant, and it was a new perspective of who I am and who I thought I was at that time. I don't know, what do we think when we're 16, 17? But here I was, the 17-year-old with all these songs and about to go off on the road. And so she said she was an antenna. That's how she described herself to me. She'd pick up my higher power, whatever that was. She never said what that was, but she said, and then she'd tell my human mind. And it was just loving, self-loving, like the best coaching from the highest power that you could get. And it worked. I mean, it was everything she said too. She wasn't very predictive. You didn't go to find out, if your boyfriend was going to come back. She would look at your life and kind of try to tell you where you were going and how to best navigate going forward to keep yourself whole, especially, in that business. Now that I look back and that I didn't actually get to where I thought I wanted to go when I was 16, I'm very blessed, because I think it's a very hard business to succeed in spiritually. But in any case, so I saw Eunice probably for 10 years, twice a year. And back then, we didn't even have recorders.
Oh, wow.
We had to take notes or to bring someone to take notes. So devices, I've been through from no devices to here we are on Zoom recording, it's like amazing, amazing. So, and everything started to happen. I toured, I was winning awards regionally, making a name, being part of a bigger community, but there were so many underlying diseases in me, the addictions. I was addicted, and it was, I didn't know how else to live, and I didn't have very good finances, and it was taking a toll. So I came in off the road, and one of my best friends died.
Oh.
And that was what opened me, that big depth of grief, opened me to this intuitive part of myself, whether I wanted to go there or not. And I started to be able to sense him and get this feel for what does it mean when somebody you really love dies, but because I don't believe you end, I never have. And so I began to explore that, and that's when the automatic writing began for me. I was writing a letter, and my hands became independent of my thinking and started to say something completely different than where I was going. And it was far more profound about if you make judgments, like a lens and a camera, the more judgments you make, the more you close down your perception, so you can only see a really tiny little bit of things. So we need to open up and be less judgmental and stuff like that. And when I asked, who are they? They said sound. And I'll tell you, Omar, I'm a skeptic by nature. I'm a skeptical person, and I don't think it's a bad thing. But all along the way, it was like sound. Okay. And that was kind of, what does that mean? Sound. But for somebody who had spent my whole life coming up and being immersed in music and at a young age and producing music at a young age, it made sense to me. Okay, your sound. But, and they just said basically the same tone of what I learned from Eunice of how to help people self-love. Yeah, there's predictions. There's some pretty awesome predictions along the way, but most of it was about how to help us learn to take care of ourselves. And then ultimately it became, when it got bigger, it started to unfold into kind of a more bigger organized force on the part of what eventually became Albert Einstein and the Party. That's like they were revealing themselves. First, they started in music, and then it took a long time. And then when I started to speak, I was a channel. I was the antenna. That's what I told people. I just pick up your whatever and I talk to you. And if it's of value to you, because I know it helps me. So people started coming. I would give them readings and they would go. We had cassette players you could that sat on the table that you could press record, and we could send them away with the cassette. And but no one, and everybody kept coming back, but we never talked about it. Nobody ever talked about what these voices were saying. And I was kind of okay with it because I was immersed in music. And so I did this for several years until one day I said, I want to do a group of people. Let's get a group of people together and see what this channeling would say about anything. I was very curious. I was a big fan of Jane Roberts. Are you familiar?
It sounds familiar, but I don't.
She's from the way back. She was from the 60s and the 70s. She has a series of books called the Seth. She channeled this entity called Seth, who was maybe somebody from another life. I don't remember what she said was her relationship to him, but whoever he was, it was fascinating. It was all about the structure of reality and how we fit into it and where our power lies within it, and much more than maybe channeling aliens or Pleiadians. It was very practical. So I wanted to see what these voices that were coming out of me were saying, but nobody in my circle seemed to be interested. I asked everybody, just no, they didn't. I was like, okay. But then Teresa came as a referral, and then she sent 5 other women over the course of the next 6 months. And then finally her best friend, Kim, came that fall. And when Kim came, something happened, like there was some clear shift, and we see it at the time. We published our diaries, so it's all in there, but it was like I was holding onto the edge of the couch giving this reading to this stranger. And about the same time, I think we all said, hey, there's my group. And they said, maybe you'd come and talk to all of us because we want to know more. And that's when we started to document the material and make it available to everybody who was coming to hear this, because now it's shifting into this other level. It's becoming something that I don't quite know. I mean, it's exciting. Don't get me wrong, but it was like, where is this taking us? And early on, they said very clearly, you have a mission. And this is a start of something that we can't tell you right now, but trust us, it's a big thing and it'll go on all your life. And I guess we said, okay. And we're told we volunteered and we're chosen in some way to take part in this experiment. And now they're called angels, because Kim and Teresa asked in a reading, who are you? And they said, we're angels. And I was really skeptical. I thought, well, what does that mean? Angels, where did you come from? And what is that? And in the end, the 3 of us decided we didn't really care who it was, because what they were telling us was having a profound effect on our lives. We were starting to open up, and conflicts were starting to be resolved in ways we never could have imagined. And we were starting to like have little major victories every day of, maybe old conflicts suddenly shifting and just sort of magically ending up in a better way. Stuff like that. Nothing earth-shakingly big, but it was really big for us at the time. So that was really the start of the whole pathway that then led to Einstein. Because we published our book, Diaries of a Psychic Sorority, in 1997.
Oh, wow.
And then a year later, I got a message from a tabloid in London, a metaphysical or paranormal tabloid, looking for an interview with Princess Diana on the 1-year anniversary of her passing. And would I do it? And I was pretty skeptical, because what I never even thought that I could. How do you do that? How do I just go to her? I mean, where is she? How do we do that? And I thought about it for a long time, but I thought, well, let's see, let's try. And I sat down and I channeled, I typed it, the questions and the answers, and it just came out of me. And then I printed it and read it. And for me, that was evidential. That to me in that moment, I knew that was her. I heard her voice. I couldn't prove it to I'm not here to, you can please put me under scrutiny, but in that moment I was overcome because I could hear her voice. And her whole message was, if everybody made peace, everybody who loved me would make peace. And I think the important part about the angels, if we go back to the angels, is they said, we're here, we need some humans to test this process, this theory we have here in afterlife. We have this theory of step-by-step instructions for world peace, one person at a time, starting with each individual, and we need real live humans to test it on. So they told us, the 3 of us early on, and I don't know what we thought it meant then, but we were all in. And when we started to have our natural fights, we were able to turn to this material and have these revolutionary little shifts in energy in that moment of working out a conflict for the good of the whole, as opposed to, I think what we all do, we try to have these power struggles and there's negotiating, but we've learned if we step back and we're really committed to working out this for the good of everyone, and let's let that flow, it's a whole different outcome. So that peacemaking, world peace one person at a time, starting with each self, became kind of our motto. That's what we were doing. We called ourselves the Psychic Sorority. And so when the tabloid called and they didn't want the article, they didn't want the channeling because she didn't talk about Camilla, I think. But my agent and I went on to...
Who's Camilla? Who's Camilla?
Princess Diana and Charles, Prince Charles, and he was having an affair with Camilla.
Oh, okay.
And now that she's passed and they're married.
Oh.
Camilla and him. So back then, though, he was having an affair with her. So they were trying to get some dirt that wasn't coming up, which I was really happy to see in retrospect. But my agent and I had this idea, well, maybe there's other famous people that might want to talk. And the next one was Nicole Brown Simpson. And that was very eye-opening. And then I think Johnny Versace and JFK, and by the time JFK got there, he said, we'll tell you who is coming. And then they sent Jacqueline Onassis, and then they said Einstein. And when I channeled Einstein, some of them, like Princess Di, I typed, and there's a different relationship to the different ways I think people channel. Sometimes it's just a better way to type it. And other times when I do go into my even a meditation, just I go into that space and let them speak through me. And I did that with Einstein, and I realized he is sound. He's sound. He's sound in my original 1987 automatic writing when I said, who are you? And they said, we're sound. And when that vibration went through, I went right back to there, and I realized, oh my gosh. And that's when I started to kind of think, wait a minute, this even goes back to being a child and music. Because Einstein was incredibly musical and gifted musically. Yeah. He played the piano and the violin, and he always said that if he wasn't going to be a scientist, he would have been a musician. Yeah. So, but it was just this feeling, like I said, kind of evidential, where I knew this voice, and it was the voice I had been speaking when I was channeling. It had the same inflections, and so I decided just to do a book for him. In 2005 was the 100-year anniversary of his miracle year, where he had in 1905, 5 major scientific theories that were all magnificent in and of themselves. And so I channeled 6 or 7 groups, and I spent the winter editing, sort of imagining him instructing me how do I put this all together? What do you want me to say with all this stuff? And it was really remarkable, because what he did was give me a unified field theory, which is something he couldn't do when he was living. He never did get to that quantum level of understanding. And it included these, what he calls maps of human consciousness. And it was really Einstein in afterlife delivering his unified field theory and the maps of human consciousness, and everything that we had done with the angels and the resolving our conflicts. We started training it as conflict revolution, I think in 1999. We've been just doing this work for a really long time, and I know how powerful that it is. And so here he is bringing from Afterlife. So that book from that winter, I just called it Imagining Einstein, because I don't know. At the time, I didn't know if it was him, and I wasn't invested in trying to prove to people it was him, because I think the work itself, I think the work speaks for itself. I don't think once you see the work, there's not been one person who doesn't agree that it's worthy of Einstein, at least.
Oh, wow.
And in a way, what he did with these maps and this unified field theory was he's providing the proof, scientific proof, of why the theory that they taught us for world peace, one person at a time, starting with each individual, why it works. It's his whole theory of why that process works. And it's absolutely fascinating. I have to tell you, as we go forward, it gets more and more fascinating.
Wow.
As it unfolds.
It sounds very fascinating. And I have to ask, so hopefully this doesn't come out the wrong way.
No, say anything.
Okay, so Einstein was bringing you this message of like unity, right? Conflict resolution.
Revolution,
a conflict revolution. So how did he feel about being one of the basically reasons the atomic bomb was created? Like how did you ever get any message about that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's one of the reasons why when he died, you know, from what I've learned, when you die, whatever you're emotionally attached to, if you're like holding on to, you don't want to go because of your kids, or you don't want to go, you bring that energy with you into the energy of afterlife, and it's part of, I don't know, I think what creates kind of karma with people. And that's why the Buddhists, I think their whole practice is about preparing you for when you die, so that you're not attached to anything, so you can have a higher enlightenment experience of death as well. So now, why did I go to the Buddhists?
Because of what I asked?
Yes, ask me. I lost my track.
Oh, just
why? Yes, why?
Yeah,
yes. How did he feel about it? He died with that passion attached to him. It made him it made him sick for the rest of his life, even though I think he lived in a whimsical world where because he really did, he rejected the Manhattan Project completely, had nothing to do with that, wanted to renounce himself, and yet he felt like the thing that allowed it, which was his formula, still had to be discovered. He couldn't have like suppressed it, because it was so monumentally huge and life-changing for how science understood itself. But I think he knew that, well, what did he say? He said it's easier to denature plutonium than it is to take the evil out of humans. He knew what we're capable of, I think.
Absolutely.
So, and I think, and the other thing is, I don't know if you know this about his history, but he had in the 30s, the League of Nations called upon world leaders to have these open public discussions between them, to sort of bring the world back together after World War I. And so they asked Einstein, would he publish some letters and write to somebody, and we'll publish them and we'll start to talk again. And so he wrote to Freud, and his question was, how do we end war? And Freud said, and they both said for about a half a minute, oh, maybe we need one world government. And then they quickly went, no. no, quickly. And then Freud eventually said, I don't know, but here's some short-term things that we could do to help build a world that wouldn't accept war. And number one was to really nurture hungry, open minds who are seeking for the truth. And the second one was to build community in the heart. So you've got the mind seeking for the truth and then the heart. And then the last thing he said was, you need to show the world the truth about war. You have to stop people far away. They don't know what they're talking about unless war is right here in your face. And so many people in the world don't have war in their face. And so Freud was saying, be truthfully, painfully honest. And Einstein, before he died, penned a letter with Bertrand Russell. It was called the Russell-Einstein Manifesto. And he died before they read it in 1955, but it was a plea to world leaders to find peaceful ways to resolve their conflicts, because World War III will be the end of us. And he goes on to very, very specifically describe what it's like to live through world extinction in that way. It's very graphic for 1955. You would have thought he was a psychic. And I see that's what he was doing. He was taking Freud's advice and doing whatever he could. Anyway, getting back to your question. So when he died, he took not only this world peace thing, but he took the whole Manhattan Project. Even though I think psychologically in the end of his years, in that whimsical time he lived, but deep in his gut, I don't think he ever recovered from it. And what's interesting is I had a client, I did a podcast several months ago in Austin. They were in Austin, Texas. And I got a reading out of it. And she's the granddaughter of an astrophysicist, an Italian astrophysicist, Bruno Rossi, who worked with Einstein.
Oh, wow.
And her grandfather did work on the Manhattan Project.
Oh, wow.
And she said anytime that she ever asked him anything about it, he would go in the room, another room, and he'd weep.
Oh, wow.
So that tells you how much attachment Einstein, when he died, that he had to the earth, that he had to what he did, what he left behind, the people he loved, the life he loved. It only makes sense to me that leave it to Einstein to then think up a way to do world peace one person at a time. And of course, now that he's in afterlife, he's seeing all kinds of things he couldn't see when he was living, and find a way to communicate them back and have some kind of influence on the planet to right itself. It's almost like a karmic debt that he seems to have needed to pay. And it's brilliant. I think the conflict revolution is brilliant, and the whole plan is really, it's Einsteinian is all I can see, because all I ever wanted to be was a rock star. See, so yeah, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
No, it's beautiful. I relate to so much of your story, and that's why I mean, I completely, today I was a little out of it because I woke up early. I just jumped up, and before you know it, I was drinking my coffee, and I realized it was only 2 a.m. and I was like, oh my God, like I thought it was like 5. So I've been up since 2 a.m. I went to the gym and all that stuff. But I forgot that one of the things that drew me to you was when you mentioned about music, because that was one of my first ways of connecting. I've written over 1,000 songs in my time. So I was just like, and when they would come out, it would be like, where are they coming from? And it was just like, it almost seemed accidental. Like it was just too miraculous of a thing. And then eventually, yeah, I would write songs that would come true 7 years later, 10 years later. I would write words that, and back then too, there was no YouTube or this and that. I would have to go to the encyclopedia. What is this word that I'm saying? What I'm pronouncing this word that I've never heard. and I'll go to the encyclopedia and I'll find it, and I'm like, what? So these kind of things started happening. So that's why when you were talking about, I was very curious about that, like how it happened for you. And has anything like that happened for you, where there are certain things that you wrote in songs that came true later, or did you ever go through anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. It happens all the time. And who would know until, because like you sound like you write songs like I do, because I used to say I'd go out and I'd listen for them, and then they were written and I would have to bring them back and figure out, but even that all felt like I was just channeling somebody who was telling me what to do. But I had a couple really profound episodes. One of my early singing partners, I was in a trio back in the 70s with these two guys, and in 2017, so we were old now, 18, and Lonnie got sick with cancer, and we had one last big party for him, and I played the song I'd written for him.
Wow.
And it was like it was written for that moment.
Wow.
And also when I was married, I was my future ex-husband, as I call him, he's still a very, very dear friend of mine. But I wrote a song for him, and I didn't realize it was about the end of our relationship at the time, when we weren't even having any trouble,
Wow.
So yeah, I can really relate to that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also, that was always one of my biggest conflicts, was feeling like, why didn't I get my big break? Like, it didn't make sense to me. And how you said how, like that was your thing. Like, you thought you were going to be this big rock star. Like the same. I had that in mind, but I know without a shadow of a doubt that I don't think my spiritual walk would have been the same. By no means. Like, yeah, the environment would have probably been, who knows, maybe I would have overdosed or, gone down that path. Like, you have access to everything. And so now in hindsight, I get that. And, I have had an experience also the same. A musician came to me and I kept hearing his voice, and I got physical proof that somehow it was tied into something, a message I had to deliver. And I wrote a book as well. So there's just there's so many parallels. Yeah, so many and it seems like it's ancient knowledge. This, and before I even wrote the book, it was interesting because I saw this ancient man, and it looked like what people call these Akashic records or something. Mm-hmm. And there were books all over the floor, all open, boom, boom. And there was this ancient man, and we were like putting all the pieces together to show people. But I got it. It had to happen now, because now people could even check it. They could go on the computer. Hey, like, look, I'm showing you something from ancient Greece. Look, I'm showing you something from, the pyramid in Mexico. Look, I'm showing you something, the moon, the this, that. So I put all these things to show this, I guess, universal knowledge or ancient knowledge all put into this book. And that's what this ancient man was showing me years ago that I didn't get, because I just wrote the book. Oh, this year. I wrote the book in the beginning of this year. And so that all that came together. But the same, it all started like, the third piece to the puzzle was a musician that had just got murdered. He got murdered. And I kept hearing his voice. I never listened to his music. I didn't understand why. I kept hearing his voice, and I didn't want to tell anyone, because I was thinking they're gonna think I'm crazy. Like, like why would he come to you? Like what did I have to do with him? But I don't want to go off too much, because then I'll keep talking about.
Well, I'm just thinking that it's because when we're dedicated to music, and do you sing?
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, we do breath work, constantly doing breath work. When we sing a song, we're doing our breath work, which is enormous. A lot. We breathe a lot more than people do, and we're working in the intuitive kind of subterranean realm, the more amorphous realms of sound, the non-physical music, and that's where they meet us. So if you're immersed in that, I think there's more of a chance that you would be able to have a communication than somebody who's just stuck in their head and constantly and having to be in the head. That's my theory is why they gravitate towards us, because we have that open place where we communicate.
No, absolutely. And I've said that too. I feel like all musicians and artists are already tapped in. It's just whether they choose to acknowledge it or not, but they already have that open channel, because when you're making music, you can't be stuck in your head and you have to let it flow. You have to reach into that. Well, even once I went through a brief part in my life when I had writer's block. And so I actually went to look for a book, how to get over writer's block. Well, actually, it was funny. There was a time, and this happened too. There was a musician that even gave me, like, I saw him in a dream. And again, I was in what, people, I guess, would call the Akashic records. And they literally gave me knowledge in that vision that changed the trajectory of my life. So that's why it was like, okay, if it wasn't real, like, it changed the whole trajectory of my life because of this one thing. It was like, what they were telling me was that they wasted their time here. Like, it's like almost like our death date is kind of already predestined in a way. I don't know, it kind of seems that way. But they said, like, what they were telling me telepathically was that they wish they wouldn't have wasted the time. And since we were in this Akashic records with all these books, that's what I thought they meant. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm supposed to learn. Like, I guess that's what they were telling me. I'm supposed to, don't waste time, learn. So every weekend when I got paid, I would go to Barnes and Noble's, the clearance section, and just buy whatever books I could find on clearance that meant something, that something, famous quotes, the Freemasons, Knights Templars, anything I could find that had some kind of knowledge. And by chance, I saw a book that was about writer's block, and I was like, oh, I'm going through that. So it was like miraculously at that time. And I only read like 10 pages of the book, and that's all I needed. And I didn't even read it after that. It said that the best time to write was right when you wake up and right before you go to sleep, because you're in between both worlds. Like, you're not overcritical. You're not, oh, no, I can't write that. I can't. You just let it flow. So once I got used to doing that, after that, I didn't have writer's block. I could write at any time of the day. I'll never have writer's block again. And I didn't after that. So that's why.
Wow. Now I want to go write some. I do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, but that was the first time like an artist came to me, and I never told no one about that, because it was like, I was like, they're gonna think I'm crazy. And then after when that other one came, I think it was in 2019 when he was murdered. And I was already open because my brother had passed away in February. So I became that was one of the biggest awakenings I had. That's when everything just exploded. And so I knew I was already in a sensitive state because of that. So when that artist, I started hearing his voice, I was already experiencing so many things that I was like, okay, I accepted it. And then it revealed itself why and this and that. But yeah, I don't want like, I wanted to focus on your story. That's why.
Okay, all right, but okay. Well, but I'm loving your story too. Wow.
Oh no, I just wanted you to know how much I relate to your story. Like, that's why, I'm so because I know people might see it and be like, okay, Einstein, that's crazy, obviously, like. But there was even a man that wrote a book. I don't know. Have you ever heard of Arthur Ford?
I haven't.
I know it's not Arthur Miller, because that's the playwright, correct?
Right. Yeah.
I'm almost certain it was Arthur Ford. But when I was starting to experience things, one of the first things I went to was like the Bible. I wanted to know, okay, well, I'm hearing things, I'm having premonitions, this and that. Why is all this happening to me since a young age? Arthur Ford, a friend, happened to give me this book. Oh, my mom gave me this book, but I guess they didn't really relate to it. And it was this psychic. I guess he used to be like a Christian minister or something, but then he started having all these things. So he started doing seances and all this and that. But Arthur Ford, I guess, communicated with Houdini. Did you ever hear of him, or
Houdini?
Well, the whole story of because I guess people.
I haven't.
Okay, because I guess Houdini made it like his life's mission at one point to disprove mediums.
Right.
So he was really, I think, because he went to someone and he wanted to, I don't know if he wanted to communicate with his mother, or something, and then it was all a lie. So that made him upset, and after that he was just like destroying any medium he could find to show that they were fake or this and that. He would do it until this man Arthur Ford, I guess Houdini and his wife have left each other a code that only she knew. And after he passed, finally this man Arthur Ford gave her the code. And then see, but that wasn't all over the newspaper. Like, I guess it was like they kept it down, right? But thanks to this book, because that was the thing. Someone even told me that. I think my dad, when I told him, oh, like, he's always been a huge skeptic, even though when I've told him things or this and that, he's been like the biggest skeptic. But that was his thing. Oh, even Houdini proved that mediums are fake. And I showed him the book. I was like, look at this guy he proved it. He brought back Houdini's code. The wife even confirmed it. So there it is. All your skepticism. Here it is. Here's this book. But of course, he was never going to read the book, but I was just trying to show him like, hey, but all that to say, like, I know people are going to be skeptics, but it's fine. I love this conversation. So as he came back, have you still communicated, having like, I guess channels or channeling from Einstein or anything like that, or anybody else for that matter?
Well, I put out when I first did the Diana interview, I put out Party of 12, the afterlife interviews, and there's 12 people in that book. Nicole Brown Simpson and Diana and Einstein and others. And then I published Imagining Einstein, and that book is what got me really all around the world. When I put it out, I had the opportunity to speak at a event that was put on by a group called the Crimson Circle.
Oh, wow.
And they had been doing channeling almost as long as I had, only they created kind of early live streaming. It was 2001, and they had their own, it was really miraculous how this network happened, that every Saturday they did a live stream from Colorado, and they built up a huge following, like 500,000 people all over the world. So when they had this event, I was live streamed. There were 1,000 people in the auditorium, but I was live streamed in front of 250,000 people, whatever. And my whole life shifted into traveling and showing the unified field theory and talking about the ideas in it and training conflict revolution. And it was like a dream come true. You see go back to my room after my talk, and my email is like sale. I was invited all over the world to come and do this, and it was very exciting time. And in 2016, I really, everything had evolved. So it was still the same unified field theory, but in Imagining Einstein, it's very rudimental. There's sort of these hand-drawn outlines like a scientist might like scratch something on paper. And I wanted to have a graphic. I wanted to show what they were. And I was looking for an artist to draw it in a way. And I looked like even sculptors and digital artists and painters, and I couldn't find anybody. So I just did it myself. And I published what I think is the definitive work. It's called Einstein et al., which of course means and others, at Manifestation, Conflict Revolution, and the New Operating System. And it's the complete theorem, the unified field theory, the maps of human consciousness. And then the second part of it is how to do conflict revolution. And so once you figure out why it all works, then going to do it is really, it sets you up in this great way. So and I don't think I've ever stopped channel. I haven't been doing groups until the Wawa, with the jabbers, when that all happened, then I started doing regular Zoom groups for every Saturday. I had the Psychic Sorority. We get together and I channel, and those are all up in YouTube. On Barb With at YouTube. And then I decided that the state of the world it's time for me. So I put aside all the small revenue streams I had going, and quit my business administrator job at the art center and got my partners, my psychic sorority partners, together to start a new phase of our business. And I launched myself and last July on this World Peace Tour.
Oh, wow.
And so far, it's more than I ever could have dreamt of. And it's only just the beginning. So I'm very excited.
No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Especially that message, right? Of bringing peace, and it's needed right now, especially, right? So
Yes, and we're looking for the participation of the willing to take part in a worldwide nonviolent action to end the age of war. So if world peace one person at a time, starting with ourselves, the idea is when we find peace in ourselves this way, regardless of what's going on in the lens of the world and the wars and the evil and all that, we revolve, that's the revolution. We revolve our focus back here and do this work as it's mapped out, and we resolve it here first. It has this sort of magical effect in how things manifest around us. It creates a condition so where the greatest good can manifest, and it's always much greater than I could have ever thought up. That's just the miraculous part about it. It's like, wow, I never would have thought that up. But it's funny, when I first did the interview with Diana and I was sitting reading it, I was crying, and I said, this is so brilliant. Put it in a tabloid, get the people who loved you to start doing it because you told them to. And I said, and she said, I know it's brilliant, but we are not in charge. And I thought, thank God, because I could never have thought up this this thing so brilliant.
And I think one of the things that's huge now is, for example, the NDEs, the near-death experiences. And I think they're very instrumental in getting people aware of that there is a other side, right? That there is something else. Because even where I probably haven't been able to bring someone that knowledge to where maybe they'd still be skeptical, for some reason people gravitate towards those near-death experience stories. So I'm really grateful that there's these, and there's a lot of people sharing their stories and more. And so, I've connected with a few. And so I think once people hear those stories, they're a little more open to it. Yeah, and then some others come out, right? So I think having that knowledge that there is another, something on the other side, and they do want to help us, because that's one of the things I got, like, from early on, because it didn't make sense to me. It's like, how, even when I started having premonitions, how can you even see something? Because to me, it was like, how can I see it unless it already exists or something? It just didn't make sense. That's something to try to wrap, especially at a young age when it started happening. I wanted to understand, why is this happening? And I almost felt like someone's bringing me this message. Why? What is the purpose? Like, why are they showing me this? What do they want me to know? So that's kind of the thing. So I feel like that the same, like, if you're channeling things about peace, and obviously, and that's been the big thing, right? About peace, love. It always seems to be of course, they'll show you the direction the world could head in. So I've been made aware of that it's a choice, right? So hopefully humans make the right choice, and so that's why it's beautiful. Thank you that for doing that you're out there spreading that positive message. So you said you're still on the World Peace Tour right now?
I am. Okay. I left home on October 15th, and I've had several events between Duluth, Minnesota. I was down in Minneapolis, and now I'm in Madison, and I'm headed to Chicago, actually, and then down to Georgia, and then through many stops. And it's kind of a works in progress, in that I just leave myself open and I've got this plan of where I'm going to be, and then things happen around it. So I was in Minneapolis, and then I got invited to speak at this spiritual community here back in November 26th. So I stayed a couple of weeks to have that, and now I'm off to. And then I'm actually going to spend a lot of the winter in the UK. I think I go over to France for a little while too,
Oh, wow.
and I might get up to Oslo. I've got some people up there, and I'll make stuff happen where I go and keep this conversation going. There's a lot of people, podcasters I've been talking with in the UK. So they're excited about possibly meeting in person and networking this information. And what I love about this peace tour and this work is that somebody came up to me at my last engagement and said, I don't mean this to sound, threatening or anything, but are you afraid of getting hurt? Because people who, peace people get killed all the time. And I said, well, we have a way that we approach that with conflict revolution with Einstein, is that because what you resist persists, right? So you don't want to resist it. You don't want to resist even they're saying evil that persists. If you resist it, it persists. So what do? Well, what we do is we say, absolutely, that could happen. That could absolutely happen. And I've taken that in my mind to its nth degree, and it's okay with me. I've made peace with, I've had a great life. And, but I'm going to choose to manifest something else. Thank you. It's just that simple of a shift, so you don't have to go in there. And it's kind of how I feel about how this peace thing is going out. There's some people I want to see like in high places. And when I say high places, I mean there's a guy named Matthias Desmet, who is a statistician and a psychotherapist who wrote early on in the last 3 years about mass formation and propaganda. And he's a very influential person, and I think this information could shift his perspective of what he's doing. I think it could be a real big shift in psychology and psychotherapy as well. It's just a completely new way of dealing with those kinds of issues. But then this unified field theory is designed to have that same effect on everything, whether it's somebody who's a chemist who's looking at it going, oh my gosh, or someone who's a psychotherapist going, oh yeah, we could do this and this. So it's an interesting, and it's all it's not about me running out to be a rock star all over the planet. It's about having these influences. And, you were talking earlier about, what made you get to that point. Me too. And people get there when they do, but that doesn't mean that because we're speaking the truth and they hear it, but they don't believe it or is skeptical, doesn't mean that seed isn't still planted. It's just like the seed that was planted and now in you years ago, oh, yep. And it took you all that time. So I think we just need to keep speaking the truth and who knows what seeds we're sowing,
Oh, absolutely. So are you still currently doing readings as well for people, or?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. Beautiful.
Yep. I'm about to have a Christmas sale.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, if you want to let everybody know where exactly, I'll put all your information regardless in the description.
Yeah. BarbaraWith.com. BarbaraWith.com. My music site is barbwith.com. But yeah, that's me. You can find me there, and I'll get that going. And it's just, I think it's an exciting experience to have a reading. It's very deep. There's a lot. It lasts for a long time. You can go back to it and hear absolutely new things, and it changes as you change. So yeah, I'm honored to be that.
Oh, absolutely. And what's been if you don't mind me asking, well, because I know it's personal to somebody else, but have Has there been anything very interesting that has happened ever during a reading or anything like that, or that you're allowed to share?
Well, on a very practical level, I can talk about the process of the reading I just did the other morning with a man who is going through it. He's in the middle of the worst divorce you could ever dream. Lots of property, just people going at it. She's trying to destroy him, and da, 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 da. And by the time he was through, he was just like, wow, really? It's like, it's that the change that we're looking to show you is just like this. It's just not a big, people are always looking out here for big stuff to happen. And when you turn it around inside and go, wait a minute, no, it's this and this here that you have total control over of, right? You have been given the power to have control over your thoughts. You don't always exercise it. We don't know how to do it, but it's ours to do. No one can think them, no one can feel them but us, our domain. So when people come to understand these little shifts, I do it. My analogy is, do you remember spark plugs? You know about spark plugs. And there's a little gap. You have to gap the spark plug. But if you have that gap, which is just tiny, even just a tiny bit off, the car can run like it's going to die. But you fix that gap. And that's kind of how small this shift is. And so I sent him the link to his reading, because you can download an MP3, and I urge everyone to listen to it. And he wrote back, and he was just on top of the world, and he could, for the first time, see hope in how this messy thing can take place. And that, and the kind of the relief that really all he had to do was stay in his truth, because he was in his truth. She might be trying to claim this and that, but it's not true. So if it's not true, it's not true. She can say whatever she wants, but what is the truth? You know the truth. And just be there and accept it in yourself. And he was really very, very grateful. And in terms of, I think the best, though, kind of reading story is, for me, it was August 16th, 1994. I always remember, I know the reading. It was me and Kim and Teresa. And they said this thing, they said, something big is about to happen. If we had to pick a date, we'd say September 19th. So it was August 16th, 1994. And we just started writing our book. And so we assumed, of course, in September, we would be on Oprah or something. Of course, that was not it. And so every year, September 19th would come around, and we'd always call each other and go, something big is about to happen. If you had to pick a date, we say, and like nothing happened and nothing happened and nothing happened. And then we will never forget it, but whatever. And then 9/11 happened. And we thought, well, they always said time isn't our forte. So maybe that was it. And so we kind of just let that be. But when I was going to this event with the Crimson Circle in 2007, and I got to the place, and I got the queen treatment, the big suite and the open bar, and I'm sitting there looking at the program and realizing that I was going to be channeling the first worldwide channel of Einstein on September 19th.
Wow.
And then, you know that feeling where it's like this, we call it the Rolodex effect. So you go flip, 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 all the way back to when they first said September 19th. And so that's one of my just, I don't know, heartwarming channels for me that took place.
No, that's beautiful. Yeah. Wow. And sometimes it happens like that. Years later, you just never know.
That's right. That's right.
So I guess I want to ask you this last question, because I don't want to keep you forever. But what was, I know you talked about how you were mentored, and you had when you were trying to, I guess, grow your psychic gifts. So what would be something you would advise to somebody that wants to focus and really try to hone in on their psychic gifts?
Okay, here's my advice. Get a deck of tarot cards and throw the cards, get to learn them. You know, it's a learning curve, but you kind of feel your own articulation of what the meaning is as you begin to learn the cards, but use the book if you need to. Lay them out, ask a question, lay them out, and then feel into them and write how you would interpret that answer. Like, here, I'm asking this question, you know, what's going to happen with blah, 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 blah. And then you write it out and then go do it and see what happens.
Go do what exactly?
Whatever the question is. How are things going to, you know, pick a question that can, it's like, don't try to answer the great questions of your life. You're just training yourself. Because what happens was, this is how I learned with tarot cards. I would throw the cards and I'd write down what I thought they meant was going to happen. And then I went off to live life to see what really did happen. And then I'd come back and I would look at what the cards were and what I thought they meant and compare it to what actually happened. And it's a real practical way to start to get out of your head about things, because people, I think in the beginning, now you and I are sort of wired differently, so it was part of what we brought into the world, but people who don't have it that naturally, it's kind of a practical way to start understanding what that means to be a psychic. Like, what does it mean? You have to feel it out. Like you've said it and I've said it. It's like, well, wait a minute. What does that mean? And what does that mean? And what does that, you got to ask your own questions. What does it mean? So, for example, in one of the early group readings we had from diaries, they said emotions should be treated more like their electricity. And I said, what does that mean? What does that mean? And then one day I was really pissed at Teresa, I think, and I thought about it. I thought, well, they said, stop thinking about why you're mad, and stop thinking about it and put the emotion in your body and just feel it like it's electricity going through your body. And the first time I did it, it was so profound. It was so profound because it was instantly, as soon as because I was intentionally going, oh, okay, I'll try this, whatever. And I stopped thinking about her and I took this breath and it quickly rushed into my body like a kind of like a shock. And it's like, ooh, wow, that's feeling. And that was the beginning of us determining the difference between when you're in your intellect, you're thinking, you're defining, you're describing, you're judging, you're putting together form. When you're in your emotion, there's none of that. So those are just some simple things I think that can help nurture that. And at the end of the day, Omar, you know that as well as I do, that it's all a mystery. That's the bottom line. So can we live with that?
Yeah. I can.
Me too. I wouldn't want it any other way myself.
Yeah. I mean, but it's funny, like sometimes, well, yeah, I guess that's part of being even a channel, right? Where they want you to give certain messages, you just give them, like you said, without judgment. Just, all right, this is what you want me to say. I'm going to say it. And okay. You just let it come out, right? I guess that's a big thing with being a channel or psychic and all that. So is there anything else you want to talk about? I want to make sure we cover everything.
I think we've talked a gracious plenty.
Okay.
That's a lot of good conversation, Omar. Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you. The honor was mine. It was a great privilege to hear your story, or at least some of it. I'm sure we'll stay in touch, and I'll definitely kind of keep tabs and see, how the World Peace Tour is going, and yeah, it's very interesting, and I'm very intrigued by it. So
I'll swing back around when I'm out and see if we can meet up again.
Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, I'd be honored.
All
so
right.
Thank you so much, Barbara. It was
Thank
an honor to have you here. And yeah, we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Take care.
Life may move fast, or it may move slow. I met a silly man who said he make it slow. We look up out towards space, or even at the sky. One that gets away, but never look inside. Breathe in, breathe out. Life is a maze, but we'll figure this out. I mean, human beings, I ain't got no doubt.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sometimes you just feeling it, you know what I'm saying? You just feeling it. And I wanna feel this way forever.